Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. We'll be talking about the security challenges that face Pakistan at this time. Of course, when we look at the events of December 16th, overall it was a time for Pakistan. The APS operation in Peshawar is of course seen by all of us as a symbol of resilience and a day of remembrance for the lives that were lost. And of course, we'll be talking about our security with our, of course, with regard to that, as far as our National Action Plan is concerned, as far as overall our policy, as far as security is concerned, the security challenges that pose Pakistan even at this time, as we continue to battle and fight the very real menace of terror in our country overall at this time. I have with me Mumtaz, Zahra, Baloch, who's spokesperson for an office. We'll be talking to her and then other guests during the course of the program. We also have with us Brigadier Nawaz, who is a defense analyst. Brigadier Sahab, let's start off with you. Overall, of course, in terms of where we are at this time, as far as our security security position is concerned, overall, as far as the National Action Plan is concerned, in terms of that, where do you think we are at this time in terms of the threat that comes from, continues to come from across the border in many shapes and forms? How are you looking at things at this time? Ji, Brigadier Waqar, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Ji, Brigadier Sahab. Ji.
Sorry, you said Haris Nawaz, so I was just waiting.
Ji, sorry. Ji, Brigadier Waqar, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Ji, overall, in terms of the challenges that face Pakistan at this time, as far as terror is concerned, the menace of terror continues to haunt Pakistan and we continue to fight it in various shapes and forms. How are you looking at the situation at this time and the way that we are and where we are headed with regard to, of course, our National Action Plan and post that also?
Yeah, I think if you look at the background, as you mentioned, that 16th December was a black day in the history of Pakistan. And probably the date was chosen specifically to also remind us of 71, because then it adds to the wounds. And then I think we saw, innocent lives being lost by a terrorist, and nation then, I think, rallying up for National Action Plan, and then there was a resolve. As far as the Afghanistan situation is concerned, which has become the epicenter of all the terrorist activities in Pakistan, there have been ups and downs, and after 2014, we've seen U.S. forces leaving with the hope that probably things will stabilize. But now we see that that has not happened, and even regional countries like Iran, Russia, China, Central Asia, all are worried, and they have communicated it to one interim government that this is not going to work. And but I think internally, after Azme Istekam strategy was launched, there is a great resolve that this has to be finished now once for all. And our two frontline provinces of Balochistan and KP are seeing action by the defense forces, by the law enforcement agencies, police, frontier corps, and intelligence. I think November was a success because a lot of these Khawarij were sent to hell. However, I think problems still persist till the time the sanctuaries are not demolished in Afghanistan. And within Afghanistan also, I think there's a serious problem now coming up because there is a report of factionalism, especially after assassination of Badruddin Haqqani, who was a senior leader. So there are reports that even within Taliban, there are now divisions. So let's see how things move. But I'm very sure that by mid of the next year, things should stabilize.
As far as the situation with regard to Afghanistan particularly is concerned, we talk about cross-border terrorism. We also have another hostile, very real threat that comes from, India across the border. In terms of our policy there overall, how are you looking at things at this time? Let's talk about Afghanistan and, their inability to unfortunately clamp down on terror on their side, which, is something that we've been battling for a while now.
Yeah, exactly. I think after US withdrawal, there was a hope. But then things, I think, didn't turn positively for Pakistan. I think the policy is very clear. If you look at the four strands, one is, of course, internal security and fight against terrorism within Pakistan through intelligence base. That is going on. unabated, and there's no stone left unturned. The only thing is to build up the capacity of the civilian law enforcement as well as ownership by the political leadership of the both provinces, and even I would say at federal level. Then comes your diplomatic maneuver. I think Pakistan has been successful. If you look at SCO conference before that, Moscow format on 4th of October, and even before that, 28th of September, on the sidelines of UNGA, there was, I think, good work done by the Foreign Office, and Pakistan was able to rally all the neighboring countries to tell Afghan interim government this is not going to work. So they were even, I think, named, and all the terrorist organizations were named in that list. Then comes, I think, the effort at international level, like UN. GA is also, I think, a prize in UN Security Council.
Let's talk about this in terms of the provinces. You've mentioned, of course, the kind of, as far as the National Action Plan is concerned, it also envisages a certain kind of coherency, interaction with the federation and the provinces. With regard to that, as far as Balochistan and KP is concerned, of course, particularly with regard to KP, there's a different government there, and there have been challenges, or in terms of our moving ahead in that kind, if we look at what the National Action Plan envisages. Let me ask you, how do you see things with regard to that kind of coherence at this time?
I think KP has a problem. We've seen, even I think when Padachanar was burning, the chief minister with his anti-Raj, and even some Afghan nationals landed up in so that basically shows, I think, non-seriousness. And what we talk is political ownership. The first ownership is with the provinces. The chief minister is the chief executive, actually the captain of everything. He's supposed to be fighting from the front. I think there's also politicization of the issue of Afghan refugees, repatriation, and then also like Afghan registration. Now, after I think Islamabad assault, there was effort to at least identify in Islamabad who all are unregistered or illegal. And then there was a narrative built up that probably is going against one of the ethnicities. I think that is unfortunate, because the National Action Plan, the provinces, the frontline provinces have a major role. So it includes the political leadership, includes the military leadership of the within those provinces. Then, of course, higher officials of police, NACTA, civil intelligence, and military intelligence, and ISI. So I think there is a lack, and there's a need for more seriousness. Balochistan has slightly done better despite a lack of, I would say, limited resources. So they've been beefed up by the military, but at least they are serious about it. So I think there is a need for identifying the weak spots and actually having political resolve at provincial level.
When we talk about political resolve at provincial level, as far as talking to Afghanistan is concerned, of course, we've had some irresponsible statements as far as, particular KP is concerned. We know that CM KP said certain things, but in terms of our interaction with, Afghanistan is concerned, in terms of our policy with, in laying down that we have a no tolerance policy as far as any kind of terrorism is concerned. Do you think there needs to be a change in our policy? Do you think there needs to be, in the way that we deal with the Afghans? Of course, we have a sympathetic corner for them. They are, and we, for the children and the women, and overall Pakistan has always, been there for Afghanistan. But at the same time, we have a responsibility to safeguard our own borders and our own children and our own, people.
I think Pakistan has done, if you look at diplomatic effort, especially bilaterally and then regionally. There was I think, chance also given to the Taliban government that they should actually do it voluntarily. And it's not affecting Afghanistan itself. Now they should realize that this terrorism, like ISIS attacked it, or, there is a factionalism. So there are reports that even interim government had some division. Coming to Pakistan, I think one is that there was intelligence sharing by military, then of course political visits, and then Pakistan then broke off. And now we are, I think, again designated special advisor for Afghanistan. And there are some, I think, indicators that in Afghanistan, Pakistani ambassador met with the defense minister, and here also Afghan ambassador met with our, let's say, foreign office people and defense people. So it means that another last chance has been given. But I think Pakistan is very clear.
Let me include Brigadier Sahab. Let me include Brigadier Haris Nawaz also, who's into the discussion. He's a defence analyst. Thank you so much for joining us. Brigadier Haris, we're talking about, overall our national action plan and our resolve against terrorism with respect to, of course, the events of December 16th and, the way that our women, children, our people lost their lives. And overall, at this time, as far as a global perspective is concerned, do you think that Pakistan has received the kind of acknowledgement, the kind of sympathy, the kind of reinforcement that we need globally? That should have come, because of the fight that, Pakistan, of course, spearheaded, a fight that initially one has to acknowledge perhaps was not even ours.
You see, the point is Pakistan has done really a tremendous effort, right? Driving out terrorism from Afghanistan, supporting American European Union, whatever they wanted, Pakistan gets put. In return, we lost around 100,000 civilians, 7, 8, 9,000 our troops. We suffered a lot. And then, of course, economically, we lost around, I would say, 120 billion, $150 billion we suffered. And then Americans, we had just left it. Even then, we supported them. We helped them evacuating their own persons through Afghanistan and through Pakistan also, it. And then we supported the Afghan Taliban, whatever we could do it. And when they had the agreement in Doha, then they committed to the world community that their land will never be allowed to be used by any terrorist organization and against our neighbors. But they have not committed. We demanded only one thing of our Taliban. Please don't let your land be used by any terrorist organization against us or against another country or even globally. But then what we got in return, still Americans, the president has been visiting India, but he never visited Pakistan in Barack Obama when we lost so many manpower and then economics, we suffered economically, no problem. At least now we expect an American while going instantly left a lot of weapons, ammunition, knifing devices. It has fallen into the hands of all these terrorist organizations. And that is being used again of Pakistan. So now it has surged terrorism. But Chief of Staff of the National Assembly has committed and is determined that we will eliminate terrorism for Pakistan. The only thing is the whole nation has to stand. And they have to, because you see, whether it's external aggression or internal aggression, the nation has to fight and they have to stand behind the armed forces. That is what we are so for suffering, because Azm Sakam means that they support all elements of national power, they support, and then of course we go and limit terrorism. That's what we are doing. And now I think these days, you may see about 3-4 days from 9th to December to 13th December, we killed 43 terrorists. And that is a big number. And then we have apprehended also injured when they give us information. So the world community should realize now that Pakistan is a victim of terrorism. And they need to support us financially and militarily so that we get capacity to counter whatever ammunition, weapon they have left it there to fall into the hands of our Taliban. And so that we can counter. But then this is, we want a very, very deep forming.
Let me come back to you. We're going to go to Mumtaz Zahra Baloch, who's spokesperson Foreign Office, and then I'll come back to you. Mumtaz Zahra, can you hear me?
Yes.
We know that the fight that Pakistan has been fighting, as far as terrorism is concerned, with regard to Afghanistan in particular, as far as things stand now, do you think that the Afghans and the Afghan government is hearing us as far as, of course, our no tolerance policy with regard to terrorism is concerned?
Pakistan is, of course, as you said, very committed to fighting terrorism, because this terrorist threat is a present danger in Pakistan, and we are seeing every day many casualties because of these terrorist groups. And some of them, we are concerned, have hideouts and sanctuaries inside Afghanistan. Pakistan believes that we can resolve these issues through talks and diplomacy, and that is why we remain engaged with Afghanistan, and we continue to impress on them to take effective, robust action against these terror groups so that the danger that they pose to Pakistan is eliminated.
But overall, in terms of globally, let's talk about that as far as, acknowledgement of our efforts against terrorism. We know how, of course, we saw the US withdrawal and the post scenario, as far as Afghanistan is concerned, and of course, the fallout within that we saw for us at that time. Do you think that the world recognizes, the kind of efforts that Pakistan has made, particularly if we look at the West at this time? And do you think there's going to be perhaps, there can be some change there?
First of all, Pakistan is fighting this terror threat because it is a threat to us, but also to the region and the wider world. It is our commitment to fighting terrorism. We are not doing it for anyone, but for our own security and for the security of the region. We believe that there is a recognition that Afghanistan should not become a source of terrorism again. And that is why internationally there are efforts to engage with Afghanistan and to impress on them to take effective action against these terror groups. And Pakistan is ready to work with Afghanistan to take effective, robust measures against these terror groups and entities.
Right. Thank you so much, Mumtaz, Zahra. Thank you for your time. I'm going to go to Brigadier Waqar again. Brigadier Waqar sir, you heard, I hope you heard what, Mumtaz, Zahra, Baloch also said. Of course, it is our own battle and we are doing it for us also, only for us. And, as far as, of course, our own, we want to eradicate terrorism. We want, of course, our country to be a safe place. Those are realities. But if we look at globally, you also mentioned, organizations like the UN, you also mentioned overall, as far as globally, assessing the situation. We know that this is, geopolitically also, if we look at, our placement, it's not, a very, the region itself, there are, issues as far as our geostrategic position is concerned. Keeping that in mind, how do you look at the future and our relationship with our neighbors, and, where care needs to be taken in particular?
I think Pakistan has done, Foreign Office especially, I would commend it that they've done well in, very aggressive diplomacy at the regional level, as you are mentioning. Like rallying Iran, Russia, China, Central Asian republics, and even I think in Moscow format, even India was there, despite that they are playing a dirty game. So it means that regionally there is a very clear understanding because region can feel. I think the challenge is now because if you look at global geopolitics, there are two major, I would say three major hotspots. One is, of course, Russia-Ukraine war. The entire focus of the West is there because there is a specter of nuclear overhang. And then you have West Asia, which is now, we have seen destabilization with a change of government in Syria and Israel attacking. So it means that international community at that, I think, stage is more, that's how the media focus is also shifted. So somehow, if you look at the region, I think Pakistan, one, of course, will have to double down on its effort because matter of our survival. The other is that Pakistan has also been able to put pressure on the Afghan interim government. I think it started now gradually bearing fruit. Of course, a very long fight because there is a clash of wills because on one side, you had IAE thinking that they could use terrorism as a, let's say, tool of policy. And they could draw certain concession, so there were certain demands of shutting Khawarij or TTP here. But now there's a realization in Afghanistan gradually. So that's why this diplomatic effort of positioning of Pakistan's special representative, some, I think, ice is melting. And there was also, I think, China has played a bigger role, which is very good because China has interest in both Pakistan and Afghanistan. They will not like, both countries getting into tension. The only spoiler in the region is India, which has its own problem with all of its neighbors. And so it means that regionally, the effort that Pakistan has put in last 2 years now started bearing fruit.
Right. Let me come back to you as far as India particularly is concerned. I'm going to go to Brigadier Haris Nawaz and then I'll come back to you. Brigadier sir, there is, as far as India is concerned, I think Brigadier Waqar mentioned that of course it has its own problems, and we have, of course been at the behest of a lot of, terrorism that unfortunately has seeped in from there also. There are cases in point as far as that is concerned. But India's clout and position in the world, unfortunately, also leave us, it's a difficult situation for Pakistan if we look at where India is placed. Of course, at the same time, we are fully able to protect and, of course, safeguard our borders, and we are, of course, a nuclear nation also. Overall, as far as the role of India is concerned in perpetrating terrorism, it's not just if you look at Pakistan, but all over the world. Do you think the world is recognizing that now?
You see, the problem, let me tell you, India is a big country, naturally, and I strongly feel that American and European unions are using India as a proxy for America to counter China in Ladakh and also counter China in South China Sea. And then, of course, they use proxy against Pakistan also, because what all is happening in Pakistan terrorism, India is rightly blamed for this. United Nations report you must have heard about Afghanistan, and they said that now again epicenter is becoming the Afghanistan, where all other organizations like Daesh, Al Qaeda, TTP, BLA, BLF, DNA, Majid Brigade, they are all getting training there under the flag of Al Qaeda, and they show a lot of concern. Now that means Afghanistan has to do a lot, and who can pull the strings of Afghanistan? Americans, who are funding them, and of course Chinese, who are taking a lot of mines and millions for Afghanistan and giving handsome amount for which the Afghan government is running. So that is, we have to realize, and Americans have to push what all we have done for them. At least tell Indians not to interfere in Pakistan affairs. The problem in India always feel they have a exotic design in South Asia, and they feel Pakistan remain a stumbling block. And that is why they want to take revenge, because we are the main hurdle, not realizing Pakistan and India both are sovereign states, and then we are both a nuclear state. And then we have the latest missile technology to cover every inch of India, but then Pakistan has a very defensive design, and we have reported many times that our nuclear assets are for defense purposes. So the problem is that Pakistan has to maintain balance. You don't put your all eggs in one basket like China wants, we should be there. So we have to have best relations with America. Then we have relations with Europe, Russia, China, all balancing, so that we can catch these relations at the cost of someone else. That's the reason. India is a strategic partner for America. We know it's taking 2+2, then of course U2, I2. All our Indians have, because military forces and economic hub points, those are reasons. So the problem is Pakistan has to now make very clear policy about Afghanistan. We can't afford to keep Afghanistan away, being religious, cultural.
We have told, as far as Pakistan is concerned, don't you think we've made it very clear to the Afghan government that we will not tolerate any kind of terrorism that comes from their side?
You see, the point is we have told them many times. Even what all we have done for him, and our demand is only don't lose your land against us. We give them wheat, we give them sugar, we give them fertilizer, we give them all Afghan targets, uninterrupted, everything we're supporting them. The problem is Afghanis, these Taliban are thankless. They don't understand the ideology of TTP, and there is the same. That is the problem they have, and they don't realize that how much you're creating problem for us. Against only one demand, please don't let your land be used by anyone else. So now is the time we must send a very strong delegation of civil military.
There's no denying that. Thank you so much. Thank you for being with us, Brigadier Haris Nawaz. I'm going to go to Salman Javed. He's DG Pak Afghan Youth Forum. Thank you for joining us. Can you hear me, Salman sir?
I can hear you. I can hear you.
Salman sir, there is, we've been talking about the situation with regard to Afghanistan particularly, and Pakistan's stance, of course, our no tolerance policy with regard to Afghanistan, the terrorism that comes from there. At this time, do you think that they are, the efficacy of, our the way that we have laid it out for the Afghan government? How do you look at it?
Pakistan had made it very clear a few months ago, approximately a year ago, that we are shifting our gears and we are shifting our policy towards a no tolerance policy towards the terrorists infiltrating from the Afghan soil towards Pakistan. And I think it is like Brigadier Waqar has already mentioned that it is bearing some fruits. One and time government is realizing somewhat, some factions are realizing that probably it is time to have good relations, further relations with all the neighboring countries, including Pakistan. So we can see a kind of, partiality from the Afghanistan side towards Pakistan, from different ranks and files and different factions of Afghan Taliban. As far as Pakistan is concerned, Pakistan has taken a stand, and Pakistan, from its civilian side, from its military side, it is a message which was given to the one and government very clearly, very loudly, that if there will be anything coming from Afghanistan, Pakistan may not only sort it out on our own soil, but also may pursue these terrorist hubs or organizations or pockets within Afghanistan. And Pakistan demonstrated that as well for 3 times. We struck in Afghanistan a couple of times in the last 2 years, and it was a message to Afghan government that if there will be a high-profile attack which will be carried out inside Afghanistan, probably, then Pakistan will have to, put all options on the table. On the other hand, China has already played a very significant role in bridging the gap. Again, Brigadier Waqar said that replacement of or reassignment of Ambassador Sadiq is one such instance which shows us that probably there is a kind of semblance or there is a kind of sanity which may prevail at the end of the day. And probably both these nations may sort this issue out. But at the end of the day, it is not only TTP which concerns Pakistan. Almost every other organization, which is a headache not only for Afghanistan and Pakistan, but also for the region, is right now being placed and finding a safe haven inside Afghanistan. It includes ISKP, it includes Al-Qaeda, it includes other smaller factions like ATM, IMU, who have joined the ranks of TTP or Al-Qaeda. And then there are sub-nationalist organizations who are also having sanctuaries over there. So sorting all these issues out and neutralizing all these organizations over there will be quite a task for the one and government. So we'll see how it will pan out in the near future.
Right. Let me come back to you. Let me go to Brigadier Waqar. Brigadier Sahab, as far as, for example, the UN engagement on Afghanistan is concerned, how do you look at it? Do you think that they've been proactive? Do you think that they have, of course, there's a humanitarian crisis, and of course, Pakistan has done whatever we can, in terms of trying to get as much food across as possible. The people, the children, of course, and the Afghan government, that's a different story, right?
Yeah, I think as far as UN is concerned, people are saying that now the global order is collapsing. The way let's say, Gaza was handled at the United Nations, or now Syria is being, part of Syria is being occupied by Israel. It's free for all. So I think in terms of Afghanistan, yes, UN is engaged because this matter of 40 million Afghans, including 20 million women, and then there are smaller children also. So if you lock up 20 million women, means you're locking up almost 60% of the population, including the children. And that's why I think there's a factionism. So UN is engaged in terms of human, let's say, support or the food, because there's a food security problem also. But there's also hypocrisy of the West here, I think I'll mention, and this has come from the Segal report, or even one of the CIA operators like Zahra has been saying for the last 6 months, that every week $87 million are being shipped cash to Taliban by the US government or their intelligence agency. So this is, I think, unfortunate. This is that hypocritic part of it. That on one side, you would like to support the Afghan people. On the other, you are handing over cash for what? And then you left like $7 billion worth of small arms and ammunition, which has created problems. That's why the region is worried. So I think things are not very clear. But having said that, UN, I don't think so, has that much leverage with Taliban, because I think in the last one of the summits again in Doha, where they were supposed to be engaged by UN, Taliban then put condition like they will not talk about women and they will not talk about, let's say, certain things only then. So, but I think there's now, as far as factionism is concerned in Afghanistan, Taliban should realize, because there are old northern alliances added against them. that they need friends, and the best friends are the neighbors: Pakistan, Iran, Central Asian Republic, Russia, and China. And they are the only ones who are going to rescue them. They have already rescued Afghanistan. Outsiders like India or the West, I don't think so, can play that much role as the neighbors can do. So I'm sure with the regional framework and also bilateral, I think, let's say engagement, Pakistan will be able
Reserve,
to
do
push
you
them.
think that do you think we can expect a change now that we are going to be looking at a change in the administration, after the US elections, or do you think the overall policy is going to perhaps remain the same with regard to Afghanistan?
Again, the two big hotspots, or the, let's say, conflict zones, I would say Eastern Europe and West Asia. So somehow, I think initially, US would be, maybe Trump can make his intelligence accountable for why they are giving so much of money. He even said that they should not have left a bullet, why they left like 7 billion. So that may be, I think, a secondary issue for US. Their hands are full with Russia-Ukraine war, and then maintaining stability within NATO. And then is West Asia, which is a serious problem, destabilizing the entire energy hub. So maybe Afghanistan will get some attention, but I don't think so. Till June, when he, after he forms the government, then, they start feeling it, getting briefings, and then start running US after 20th February. So 6 or 7 months will be focused on priority areas. China, Indo-Pacific is their priority area. And then, of course, there are serious internal problems with the Trump is actually going to fight the entire establishment, as it looks like. So I'm sure it's going to be, his hands will be full. I doubt it that he'll be able to focus that much on Afghanistan.
Let me come back to you. Salman Saab, there is, we're talking about the post-election scenario and the fact that, according to Brigadier Waqar, he's saying that, perhaps, of course, the US, the president, after the presidential election, of course, Trump's hands will be full with a lot of other issues. But do you think that overall there may be a change in policy? Because he's talked about, his other wars, and he seems to have a different take on, than the older administration, the Biden administration. How do you look at it?
I think there will be a change of policy. Just yesterday, Brian Masood is going to be the incoming chair for the Foreign Relations Congress. He had he summoned John Kerry, and he asked him many questions and presented some facts that around 14.9 million, I think, or 15 million were sent to Afghanistan just for the training of some Afghan girls to how to weave carpets. And then he said that $75 million were sent to Afghanistan to teach Afghan women how to go for the farming and agricultural elements. So he asked the question that if this much of amount, 90 million or almost, has been sent to Afghanistan for the Afghan girls, but all the Afghan girls and women have been banned from coming outside of their homes by the Afghan Taliban. So where is this money going? So I think these questions and these facts and figures which have been raised by the Republicans and obviously the incoming officials will bear some fruits, and there will be a kind of policy change towards Afghanistan. Apart from this is what is on record. But if there is some kind of black ops going on, if the CIA or some other hostile agency is involved in Afghanistan and they're sending cash amount to the Afghanistan and to IA, time will tell. Probably they will change their policy or not. But as far as the policy of Trump is concerned, we can clearly see that he has clearly a different stand from the Joe Biden or the previous.
If we talk about the National Action Plan, where do you think the gaps are? Where do you think that we need to reinforcement, and where perhaps we've not been able to implement as much as we should have, those areas?
As far as National Action Plan is concerned, I think our counterterrorism strategy was quite on the dot. But my concern has always been, and I was always vocal about this as well, that the ideological framework of these organizations needs to be countered, be it a religious radical organization or be it a sub-nationalist organization. Unfortunately, Pakistan's policymakers, religious scholars, they came up with an idea of Paygam-e-Pakistan, which tried to convey this message towards the masses. But I don't think so that it delivered that kind of message which was needed to counter this ideological, framework of these ideological organizations. that is where we are lacking, and that is where we need to work more.
Let me go to Brigadier Waqar. Brigadier sir, we know that overall we've seen reports also that have come in terms of recommendations for stability. We've also seen Brigadier Waqar, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Ji. So, call for stability overall, and as far as, a balanced approach is concerned, when we talk about combining militancy, for example, with governance efforts and public inclusion. And, of course, like earlier on, we saw Salman Sahab also highlighting that the message needs to seep in, and that has to, throughout society, through all the tiers of society. How do we move towards that? How do we move towards that integrated approach, in your opinion?
I think even if you look at the basics of national election plan, most of the things are covered, and then you, let's say, butter it up with the Azma-e-Istehkam strategy. I would say that as far as there were 4 or 5 major things, if you leave the minor thing. One was, of course, legal. How do we try, so there were special anti-terrorism courts, and somehow the sunset clause then disallowed it, and a lot of terrorists actually left. And these are the guys who are now coming to hit you again. Then, of course, is political, which is very important, the ownership by any political party who is leading the federation and those who are leading in the provinces. So there, I think we find, especially in KP, lack of it. There should be some seriousness on that. Then, of course, counter-violence extremism and counter-terrorism, narrative or strategy. So on that, I think a lot of work has to be done. But by and large, I think, in my opinion, maybe I'm wrong, that Pakistani people now understand, especially when TTP was declared as Khawarij, and they've seen what they are doing, like in Quetta or Peshawar or in bordering region in Balochistan, that they are not serving any purpose for Islam. You can't, go and hit innocent children like on 16 December 2014, or mosques, or even, attack the state institutions. What service are they doing, and what is the purpose? And then was, of course, something related to, I would say, strengthening those organized like NACTA. And then is at provincial level, there used to be, I remember, apex committees who meet regularly and coordinate the entire effort. So even the provinces have a lot of resources. Then you beef it up, building up of capacity of the law enforcement, and then having trust, because this fight is for every Pakistani. This fight is not, let's say, specific to an institution. So there has to be political ownership. And somehow, because of political polarization, this narrative was dented. But by and large, I think Pakistani, irrespective of even they are coming from religious parties, they understand that these Khawarij, they are not serving Islam at all. So I think there's a wider understanding. But I am hopeful with, I think, these efforts, and wherever there are gaps, if we cover it, I feel that by mid of next year, we'll see positive changes.
Do you think that overall, Salman Sahab, do you think overall, as far as, we talk about dialogue, we talk about, bilateral and regional dialogue can, eventually, like Brigadier Waqar is saying, will lead to much better results. For example, according to him, he says, if we look at maybe till next year, if we give it another 6 to 8 months, for example?
Definitely, because among nations, it is always a dialogue or bilateral dialogue or regional dialogue, which will pave the way for some kind of policy framework, regional policy framework, which will result in some kind of sustainable, not only sustainable peace, but also sustainable development as well. So dialogue is the only way out. If you see towards the statements of Foreign Minister of Afghanistan on the funeral of Khalil Khaqani, who was recently killed in a suicide attack. He also mentioned this, that the regional countries now sit together and they need to have a dialogue and need to understand this threat of ISKP, and then they need to form up some kind of framework so that we may collectively neutralize this threat. And this is what Pakistan is saying. Pakistan is saying that not only ISKP but also TTP and Al-Qaeda and all such other organizations needs to be sorted out and neutralized. But for that, we need to sit at the table, we need to talk, we need to form a policy framework which will be followed by all the regional stakeholders, particularly by Pakistan and Afghanistan. And there will be obviously positive results which will be coming out of that effort. So dialogue obviously is the last resort, and the last hope as well for the regional countries. But for that, intention and also a change in the mindset is required at all levels, especially inside Afghanistan.
Right. Fair enough. Thank you so much for being with us. Salman Saab, thank you for joining us on this very important topic. Thank you for being with us, Brigadier Retired Waqar Khan. Thank you for joining us, Brigadier Haris Nawaz. Thank you for being with us today. And Mumtaz Zahra Baloch, thank you for your input. Of course, Pakistan is committed to tackling cross-border terrorism through bilateral and regional dialogue. And we know and hope that, in the next perhaps 6 to 8 months, there will be constructive changes, constructive, headway with regard to any kind of terrorism that we see, of course, coming from countries like Afghanistan overall. Pakistan has a no-tolerance policy to any kind of terrorism, and of course our armed forces, our government, our security forces are fully committed and cognizant and capable of defending our borders. Thank you so much for joining us today on Perspective.